Biological diversity or biodiversity refers to the variety of life on Earth at all its levels, from genes to ecosystems, and can encompass the evolutionary, ecological, and cultural processes that sustain life. Biodiversity plays a crucial role in our life. Not only those species that are rare, threatened, or endangered are included in biodiversity, but also as human beings and other organisms. It affects most aspects of our lives since it provides the basic needs of humans such as food, fuel, shelter, and medicine. It also brings forth pollination, seed dispersal, climate regulation, water purification, and many more. However, as human dominates the earth, it causes rapid ecosystem change and massive loss of biodiversity across the planet. The threats include habitat loss, fragmentation, unsustainable resource use, pollution, and global climate change. With that, there are treaties that has been established that focuses on the conservation of the biological diversity, and one of these is the Convention on Biological Diversity. United Nations Environment Program or UNEP showed their response by convening the ad hoc working group of experts on biological diversity in November 1988. On June 5, 1992, during the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, the convention was opened for signing in the Rio Earth Summit. It remained open for signing until June 4, 1993. When it got 168 signatures, the convention went into effect on December 29, 1993, 90 days following the 30th ratification. The first session of the Conference of the Parties was set for the Bahamas from November 28 to December 9, 1994.
The United Nations Environment Program, which is also known as the UNEP, convened the Ad hoc Committee or the Ad hoc Working Group of Experts on Biological Diversity in June 1987. So the work of this committee was to explore the need for an international convention on biological diversity. In May 1989, it established the Ad hoc Working Group of Technical and Legal Experts. This is to prepare an international and legal instruments for the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity. By February 1991, the Ad hoc Working Group was renamed as the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. Its work culminated on May 22, 1992 with the Nairobi Conference for the adoption of agreed text of the Convention on Biological Diversity. The convention was opened for signature on June 5, 1992 at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which is commonly and popularly known as the Rio Earth Summit. It remained open for signature until 4th of June 1993. By that time, it received 168 signatures. The convention entered into force on 29th of December 1992.
The goals and objectives of Convention on Biological Diversity. There are three objectives of Convention, and the first one is the conservation on biological diversity. Number two is the sustainable use of the components of biological diversity, and the number three is the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out and the utilization of genetic resources. The first one, the conservation and biodiversity, is the practice to prevent and protect the wealth and variety of the species, habits, ecosystems, and genetic diversity on the planet. It is important for our health, wealth, foods, fuel, and services we depend on, and it plays an integral role on supporting many sectors of development. Number two is the sustainable use of the components of biological diversity. Sustainable use means the use of components on biological diversity in a way and at rate that does not have the long-term decline on the biological diversity, and it is maintaining the potential to meet the needs and aspirations of the present and future generations. Number 3 is the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. In this, components of Convention on Biological Diversity, it aims that this agreement of the Nagoya Protocol and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources is aimed to share the benefits arising from the utilization of genetic resources in a fair and equitable way, which is we are now experiencing. Okay, and in the first, second, third objectives of convention, the first one is pointing about the conservation of biological diversity. We need to conserve it. And the number 2 is the sustainable use, which is we need to use it in a good way and preserve and protect it for ourselves, also for the biodiversity, because it affect the major part of our life, which is our health, and we get these natural resources from our biodiversity, so that we need to prevent and protect it. And the number 3 is we need to share in a fair and equitable way it on everyone and everywhere.
Importance of Convention on Biological Diversity. First is conservation of migratory species of wild animals. The Convention on Biological Diversity to the conservation of migratory species of wild animals aims to conserve terrestrial, aquatic, and avian migratory species throughout the range. It is an intergovernmental UN treaty concerned with the conservation of wildlife and habitats on a global scale. Second is, it holds ecological and economic significance. Ecosystems and the biological diversity contained within them provide a stream of goods and services, the continued delivery of which remains essential to our economic prosperity and other aspects of welfare. Ecosystems goods refer to the natural products harvested or used by humans, such as wild fruit and nuts, natural fibers, medicines, and so on. More importantly, ecosystem services support life by regulating essential processes such as purification of air and water, the composition of waste, and generation and renewal of soils, as well as by moderating environmental conditions, by establishing climate, reducing the risk of extreme weather events, and protecting soils from erosion. Third is ecological life support. It means sustaining life on Earth. The biodiversity we see today is the fruit of billions of years of evolution, shaped by natural processes and increasingly by the influence of humans. It forms the web of life of which we are an integral part and upon which we also fully depend. And lastly, each species is extremely important because they sustain our needs. In addition, we all have roles where, when one is lost, there will be a serious change in the environment. Cartagena Protocol. The Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety to the Convention on Biological Diversity is an international treaty governing the movements of living modified organisms, resulting from modern biotechnology from one country to another. It was adopted on 29 January 2002 as a supplementary agreement to the Convention on Biological Diversity and entered into force on 11 September 2003. The protocol seeks to protect biological diversity from the potential risks posed by living modified organisms resulting from modern biotechnology. It establishes an Advanced Informed Agreement that is also known as AI, a procedure for ensuring that countries are provided with the information necessary to make informed decisions before agreeing to the import of such organisms to their territory. The protocol contains reference to the precautionary and reaffirms the language in principle Principle 15 of the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development. The protocol also establishes a biosafety clearinghouse to facilitate the exchange of information on living modified organisms and to assist countries in the implementation of the protocol.
The Nagoya Protocol on Access to Genetic Resources and the Fair and Equitable Sharing of Benefits arising from their utilization to the Convention on Biological Diversity is supplementary agreement to the Convention on Biological Diversity. It provides transparent legal framework for the effective implementation of one of the three objectives of the CBD, the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. The Nagoya Protocol was adopted on October 29, 2010 in Nagoya, Japan, and entered into force on October 29, 2014, 90 days after the deposit of the 50th Instrument of Ratification.
Maintaining ecosystem flows, mainstreaming biodiversity, and restoring degraded forest lands, and enhancing carbon stocks through an integrated landscape approach. Okay. The Philippine Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, whose vision is that by 2028, biodiversity is restored and rehabilitated, valued, effectively managed, and secured, maintaining ecosystem services to sustain healthy, resilient Filipino communities and delivering benefits to all, maintaining or improving conservation status of nationally and globally threatened species in the country. Combating environmental organized crime in the Philippines. To combat environmental organized crime in the Philippines through legal and institutional reform, capacity building in the law enforcement chain, and demand reduction measures. The Philippines is one of the 17 megadiverse countries which host several thousands of species of plants and animals. However, illegal trade in wildlife and wildlife parts put at risk the country's biodiversity. Recognizing the threats of the illegal wildlife trade to the country's biodiversity and economy, the Philippine government passed legislation created interagency groups to combat the trade in illegal wildlife and wildlife parts and is building capacity across the law enforcement chain.
Someone can contribute in this Convention on Biological Diversity. Number 1, support local farm. Number 2, save the bees. Number 3, plant local flowers, fruit and vegetables. Number 4, take shorter showers. Number 5, respect local habitats. Number 6, know the source.
The Convention on Biological Diversity, known informally as the Biodiversity Convention, is a multilateral treaty. The convention has the three main goals: the conservation of biological diversity, the sustainable use of its components, and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from genetic resources. Therefore, this convention makes the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity a real priority, so that we can ensure a new and sustainable relationship between humanity and the natural world for the generation to come.